Hi, everybody. I'm Elysabeth Alfano, and welcome to the Plant-Based Business Hour. What is socially responsible investing? Does it make a difference? Can you start even with a small amount of money? And what is not socially responsible investing? I want to get into it right now. Stephan Kerby joins me from Iowa. Stephan, how are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
I
Everybody that
am.
knows me calls me Stephan or Kerby. So either one is best, but Kirby's a great name. That's what most people call me. So
I'm
people
calling you
that are listening,
Kerby. How could I
Kerby.
ever give up on that? I'm calling you Kerby.
Nice.
Let me just sing your praises here for a little bit. So, you are a socially responsible investor yourself, and you are a financial advisor. You work with KMF Advisors. In fact, there you head up and are the director of the socially responsible investing division. You have a certificate from in socially responsible investing, I guess we'd say, from the Center for Sustainable Investment Education, but mostly you are the author. Let me see if I can get it in here. You are the author of You Are the Change, a beginner's guide to responsible investing. This has been featured in Forbes and Insider Focus and other publications. So I'm happy to have you here with me. I want to get right into it because we've got
I
lots to
appreciate it.
discuss.
I appreciate
So
it.
what is socially responsible investing? Is it the same as ESG investing? And why should we care?
Great question. So, yeah, as we go through the interview, you'll hear I'll mention both social responsible investing and we'll talk about ESG. ESG is just a way of being a social responsible investor. And there's multiple ways to go about doing that. But to keep it simple from a definition standpoint, because again, it takes on so many layers, social responsible investing is really a strategy that seeks to consider both financial return. I always stop there because most people think social responsible investing is just impact, but it's also considered financial return as well as social and environmental good to bring positive change, right? So it's important to hit that financial return because a lot of folks have this misconception as it gets involved in social responsible investing that, boy, I want to do that, but I'm going to give up return to do that. And that's a major misconception that we'll tackle today. But that's the concept of social responsible investing. It could be anything from boycotting a local store even that you don't, is selling items that you don't believe in, or it could be supporting a local store even that's selling items that you believe in and support. And it can get significantly deeper than that. And we can talk about that. ESG, again, is a little bit more complex. It stands for environmental social governance. It's what I call a filter, right? So if I was sitting down with a client and they said, look, Stephan, I've got some interest in being social responsible, I put them through a questionnaire, find out what their values are, et cetera. And then I'm going to run all those investments through what I call an ESG screen. And these screens they've been out for a little while now. A lot of groups have them. There's some pros and cons to them, but essentially what it is I would take an already good company. So let's say I already like the company. It's already a fundamentally good company. Then I'll run it through this additional ESG screen. What that ESG screen is looking for, again, issues as it revolves around environmental, social, and governance issues. A perfect example could be BP oil back in the day, right? So, but we had the oil spill. BP had been out of our portfolios for months because there was signals that were firing off saying environmentally we have some concerns here. So ESG is just, again, an additional filter that investors like myself will use to find out background or how companies have performed outside of the books, so to speak, outside of the numbers.
Okay, so lots to unpack there.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you were saying, oh, well, socially responsible investing can even be boycotting. Now, how does that figure in? Because I think of socially responsible investing as something you give into, not something you take away from. Maybe you can help me see that line.
Yeah, so social responsible investing. I mean, again, there's multiple layers to it. So one area, as we call it, is again just avoidance. So just avoiding companies that you don't believe in. Simple. So again, it's simple protesting with your money. And again, if you look back in Vietnam, during that era, a lot of colleges and trusts associated with colleges pulled their money together, got together, and said, let's divest from these companies in South Africa that are, apartheid or other issues. So again, it's divesting from issues, but also supporting companies. But again, this is where it can get loopy. For example, as a vegan, some of the companies that we wouldn't want to get into would be like Tyson's, LabCorp, et cetera, right? But I could also buy into LabCorp, so I could also own that stock and use that because now, as somebody that purchases a stock, I'm an owner of that investment now. So with that ownership comes some rights. That means I could be at the board of directors and vote. I could vote on who's on the board, and I could have some say in the direction of that company. So again, there's a lot of ways to be this social responsible investor. So a lot of folks are shocked to find out that I may own Tyson. Why I own Tyson is because I want to direct Tyson. If that makes sense. Yeah.
It sure does. And PETA loves you for that. That's one of their strategies. They go in, they buy a lot to have a voice really with those stocks, that ownership. You usually need to have a significant amount, and then they can go in and direct that company as part owner. And the more shares you have, the more you own. So the PETA has used that as a strategy quite a bit. When you say that you own Tyson because you want to direct Tyson, how can you as an individual, so PETA as an organization, that's one thing, so perhaps investing at a larger scale, how can the individual direct something like Tyson?
It's a great question. There's a lot of groups out there that actually are working with individual investors or smaller investors to pull those votes together.
Really?
So I'm just one person, but with 100, with 1,000, with 10,000, now I'm a larger voice. And that's also what PETA is doing. They're requesting folks that are involved or have these company stocks to be involved so we can pull those resources together. Because again, the analogy I use is, it's simple. If the corporation's this large ship and it's sailing down, I mean, you've got a couple options. Move out of the way, right? So you've got the people that are like, I want nothing to do with that. They move out of the way. You're the people on the shore with the signs protesting the ship. That's fine. The ship's going to keep sailing right past the protesters.
Yes,
I
they
want
will.
to commandeer the ship. I want to take over the ship and steer the ship in the direction we want. And that's how you can do that with stock ownership.
Yes. So it's very empowering. So I realize it does take some money and some sort of vision for how you want to work or protect that money, but it is very empowering. So if you watch the news and you feel disempowered by what corporations are doing to the environment and even workers as we go through COVID here, and you see lots of meat packers going to work unprotected, et cetera, and you just say, this does not sit well with me. I am not behind this. What can I do? I love that there's another option besides boycotting them and besides just getting out of the way is actually trying to direct them. So one of the questions I have for you is, how do you know if your socially responsible investing is turning the Titanic at all? How do you know if your voice is getting through? And I have a follow-up question to that, but let's start there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'll just take a quick step back when we're talking about the other piece. An example is that was Beyond Meat. I know a lot of folks listening to are familiar with Beyond Meat. Well, it was the owners of Tyson stock that really started that put the pressure on Tyson's to invest in alternative meat, and then we have what we have. So this is a perfect example of taking over the ship and steering it in the right direction, so to speak. But as far as how do you know you're making an impact, it's difficult. For me, it's step by step. So for example, one of the things besides veganism that I try to support is companies that don't have at least 2 or 3 women on the board of directors. It's simple logic, right? If you have 6 of the exact same guys sitting in the room, we're going to have 6 very similar opinions. It's just not logical, and that's not an efficient way to run a business. But if you have multiple opinions, multiple perspectives, multiple paradigms, that's an efficient way to run a business. So how do I know that I'm making an adjustment? Well, when these board meetings come up and they're voting for board members, if I vote for a female board member and a male got elected, well, then I know I didn't really make an impact, right? So short term, I can see that there's some movements because I'm voting for very specific things.
And do you see a lot of socially responsible investors going towards the JBS, the Tyson, the Maple Leaf kind of companies that are showing their interest in plant-based options, but the majority of what they do is still meat? Because I wrestle with that.
Yeah, no, therein lies the tricky question, right? So, and then again, you've probably had these discussions with other folks. I remember the Impossible Burger, and my understanding, I don't recall, but I think they tested on 90 rats or something once. So I had a lot of folks that are like, I won't eat that. They tested on rats. I support that wholeheartedly. But I also look at what the impact Impossible Meat has made, right? So it's always trying to find that balance, right? Of impact, but also being realistic to what's going to create the larger change.
I love Pat Brown. I love Impossible Foods. I realized that there were 90 to 110 mice, I believe it was, involved, but the impact he has made bringing the Impossible Whopper to Burger King at 7,200 locations. And that's not even talking about being in Kroger grocery stores and all the work that he has done. I can't sing his praises enough, loud enough.
I'm in agreement. So that's always a tricky one for us, for vegans and a lot of folks in this social responsible realm, right? And again, it's I try to be careful. There's no wrong or right answer to what degree that you feel comfortable. I mean, I got torn apart once because I didn't use vegan dental floss when I was first vegan. I didn't even know there was such thing as a vegan dental floss.
I
But I
didn't
wasn't
know
vegan because I didn't use vegan dental floss. So you can go to all ends of the spectrum. To me, I just tell folks, do the best you can do, right? We're just all trying to do the best that we can. If you're making any impact, you're making an impact, and it's just doing a little bit more each time.
Yes. Yes. And using your voice in concert with your dollars makes a bigger impact than if you weren't bringing those two forces together. So very important. A concern that I have is, and again, they're similar phrases, but they're not the same. With ESG investing, I sort of feel like maybe it's not greenwashing per se, but it's sort of, oh, I checked the box. On their website, somewhere in the back, it says, oh, we care about the planet. Therefore, I'm an ESG investor. It just seems like I'm afraid that ESG investing, that phrase, is going to go the way of natural and organic, which now almost means nothing because it's been so abused by the industry. Do you see that happening with the phrase?
Sure, I think that's a fair point and a fair question. I mean, even it's still early on, right? So, I mean, social responsible investing has been around for some time now, but previously it was more driven by religious values and some other entities. Now it's gone more against socially responsible. But so ESG is still fairly new, and I have very similar concerns to you. So now it's the new hip word. I've got an ESG portfolio. What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah, is that any different than the other portfolio that you have? Because the issue is there's no set standard for what ESG represents now. So I could have my own ESG standards, you could have your own ESG standards, and they could be miles apart. So that's the issue with it right now as far as the industry is concerned. We're trying to find some unity on that. And will there just be one ESG that everybody follows? I don't see that happening. And that's where it gets tricky again, because you hit it on the head. Now, over the last few years, everybody's got an ESG portfolio, and I've looked at them, and I'm like, I don't see a huge difference between that and what you had previously, except for the cool letters. Now you have 3 cool letters, and you think it's a better portfolio. So there's issues.
And even ESG, it doesn't incorporate or encompass animals, animal welfare, biodiversity. I mean, it's very broad, environmental and social governance. So, in theory, it's meant to be a diverse board and a company that has environmental standards. But, there are many environmental criminals, can I call them criminals? Offenders that still claim that they have ESG standards. So I think that's very hard to reconcile. And I'm surprised that there's no regulation of this because it's very confusing to the consumer. And these are ultimately goods that people buy into. So, here you have legislation against, can we use the word meat? Can we use the word sausage for plant-based sausage, plant-based meat? But what about people being confused about ESG and if it is actually doing any good? So are we going to see regulation come into play here?
I think so. I think the industry is leading that way. Again, what you see in Europe and Canada and just abroad, and again, we're just a little behind from that standpoint. And what you see abroad is it's becoming the fiduciary standard, which means if you're not taking social responsible investing, if you're not using these screening, you're not doing what's best for the client. And I could see the logic behind that because, again, I'm just already taking the same process I used before, and I'm just applying an additional screen. So a little more screening isn't going to hurt, right? So it's not a bad thing. So to me, I see that coming at some stage. When, I don't know. But again, you're seeing it abroad, and you're seeing a lot of changes abroad that I think will come here. I mean, in Europe, again, if you don't have 3 women on the board of directors in some places, your company doesn't exist. So we're always a little behind. It's coming. It's coming now.
Well, are you seeing that companies are taking note? Are they saying, oh, our investors want something else and we have to deliver? Or are they saying our investors want something else? We'll just, put up a page on our website and check, we're done.
I think you see it both, right? So I've seen the pressure being put on companies, and then you see they resist it, and they come out with a letter of, we felt this would be the right answer. No, you were compelled to make that choice. So you see the folks that were compelling, and then you do see the folks that are actually sincerely trying to make an impact. And I think that's the wave now. You're seeing more and more of that, folks going into this business model with that concept in mind. So I think that's going to promote the most change, because again, as the old dinosaurs start falling off and new, more efficient companies take their place.
hmm There's so much equity to being a leader. So hats off to the companies that recognize this from a business standpoint. I'm talking about not even just what you're hoping to do for animals on the planet, but there's a real opportunity to be out in front and be a leader here. And those that don't, they're really missing a big financial opportunity, I think, because people are, particularly as you look at investors as millennials, Gen Z, next
Yes.
investors, they're not putting up with you. So from top to bottom, you better have your moral stake in the ground and let it be known, because they're not going to put up with anything else. So these companies are going to be forced to change. But something that's frustrating from my perspective, so as a vegan investor, I can look at funds that are trying to be animal friendly, and I look inside the fund and I'm like, okay, Intel, Microsoft. Yes, I guess technically they're not doing any harm because they're not fossil fuels and they're not ammunition, but it's hard for me to really wrap my mind around that. And so as we have very few IPOs, Beyond Meat on the market, okay. And there are IPOs in other countries. Canada has several, the very good butchers. Israel has a bunch, just had another one recently. Elsa baby food in Israel, and Meat Tech 3D meat printers. So there are some options, but very few. So I'm starting to put together my own portfolio because I'm willing to invest outside the United States, but of different companies, but it's very hard. Right now, your average vegan fund is like Microsoft. So I don't know if you can comment on that.
No, you hit on the head. I mean, first off, there is the issue. So that's why I do what I do. And when I do these, I just try to focus on being the author, but I'll give folks some hints on some other pieces as well. There aren't a lot of vegan funds. That's why I have to do what I do. So we had to create our own. You've got Carner Blue Capital. You've got Beyond Investing. There's two groups really out there that have what I would consider vegan portfolios. Now, again, it's what's your definition of vegan? So there you have it. When you've got a vegan portfolio that's got 280 positions in it, there's going to be some gray. Do I consider that vegan, not vegan, et cetera? So they're at least attempting it, right? They're at least attempting it.
100%.
But to me, the best way of doing it, and just the way that I do it, because again, I probably same as you, is I'm looking at these indexes, I'm like, I like what you're trying to do, but I think we can do it a little bit better. Or what I think is vegan, or what I think is appropriate, or have flexibility, because to choose whether a client may or won't want. But I use like crueltyfreeinvesting.org. It's a great site. Again, it's called crueltyfreeinvesting.org. They go through every stock out there essentially, and it's simple. They have a list that's called the cruel list and the not cruel list, kind of like the naughty or nice list. You're on one or the other, right? So if you're on the naughty list, there's a reason. You're testing on animals, you're selling animal products, et cetera. And they'll tell you exactly why they're not, or why they're on the list or not on the list. So that's what we do. So essentially what I do is I'll screen all those stocks. So same thing, I create my portfolios, what's a great company. Then I screen them through cruelty-free investing. If they're considered cruel companies, they're off the list. Then I scroll through I call it what we call the she index. Same thing. If you don't have 2 or 3 women on the board of directors, you're off the company. And then I screen you through the environmental index. So you have to make all 3 of those passes before you make the cut. But our cut comes down to maybe 40 positions, 50 positions. So when I screen one of the indexes, no names mentioned, there's 277 positions. Of that, I found about 40 of those were really appropriate positions. The other is just noise. It's just to fill the space. But again, they're trying to create something broad-based, something that's for the masses, the McDonald's of vegan indexes, so to speak. Not my bag, but it's a great start. And again, for folks that are just trying to do something, it's a great start. It's a great step, and it shows some interest in at least that type of product.
So I would even argue from my own investing standpoint, you certainly don't need that many companies in your portfolio, so if you can bring it down to even 12 or, you just don't need all of that. But, and I'm sorry if I should know the answer to this. Do you at KMF Advisors have your own funds, or are you saying that when you advise folks, so you were saying that you run the companies through all of your filters, but then because you have your own fund, or because you want to show your advisors, hey, I've got these 40 choices for you and you can pick and choose when you put together your own portfolio?
Great question. So what I do is, again, we create a portfolio. So you're right. I narrowed down to about 40 positions which of that a portfolio will really only contain about 15 to 20 positions.
Right.
So folks, and again, that could be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. And folks like, wow, only 20 positions. Sometimes that's too many even. So to your point, it doesn't take a lot of positions to necessarily do that. But no, I don't run a fund, but I run what we call a portfolio. So each month again, we've got our 40 positions, maybe you're 20 in your portfolio. And each month we're making those adjustments. So I'm doing the research on those, making sure those companies are still good, and moving them in and out appropriately. But the tricky part is every portfolio is going to be different to some degree, because when I sit down, if I sit down with you, I'm running you through my questionnaire. So what you think is socially responsible may be different from the person that comes in behind you. And that's the importance of sitting down and having a questionnaire and having a conversation, non-judgmental. What are you comfortable with? Great. Now that I know where your values are and your principles are, let's look into the investment options that we have and find the right mix for you. And then on top of that, which I think is really powerful, but I'll send it to you offline, is, again, I do something called an impact report. So I can take your portfolio and tell you how many cars you could take off the road by making an adjustment, how much money is invested in private prisons, how much is invested in top CEO pay, women on the board of directors, how cruel is it? I can give you all the matrices behind your portfolio, which is usually the first step, because folks come in, they have their portfolio, and I show them, oh, you're not interested in supporting women? You're interested in supporting cruel companies? You're not, obviously, but your portfolio is telling me differently. So that's the concern, is people don't know what their portfolio is supporting. Step one, what is it supporting? And is it what you want it to support? And if not, let's do something about that.
And so therein is the value of having an advisor, folks. So you're having someone run this for you. So you've got the impact report of your own portfolio, and then perhaps they're going in and helping you put together that portfolio, which is really the right portfolio for you and your values. And then they're managing that on probably a quarterly basis. I'm not sure. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, we do it monthly, but yes, ma'am. Sometimes
Monthly.
the changes are made when we need it, but that's correct.
So where do you come down on clean energy ETFs?
Oh boy. Again, from a simplistic standpoint, I think ETFs and funds are great for folks, right? It's simple. You've got some diversity. They're extremely low cost. Again, because of the amount of positions that you have, there's always going to be those great positions. I agree with it. I don't agree with it. But again, for the average person, we're just trying to take baby steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd love to get my hands on everything and make it the perfect portfolio, but that's just not realistic for everyone. So again, you have to make some sort of compromise. And I think that's a compromise, is using some of those energy ETFs. And again, there's good and bad all over the place on some of them. You really got to research them. A great tool, and I'm sorry if I'm being long-winded here, is the USSIF website, the Forum for Social Responsible Investing. They have a whole mutual fund page, and it'll show you what they consider social responsible investments, and they'll have a grid across the top of the page that tells you what areas they're focused on. So again, if you have an interest in clean energy, you can go there, scan those, and start looking through those portfolios.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Could you give us that acronym again?
Yes, USSIF.
And then isn't there, and I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, I wanted to look it up right before we had our conversation, and a Staples order got in the way, but isn't there a, I apologize, an divesting in factory farming coalition investing group? Stephen, I might have to follow up with everybody after the podcast.
Yeah, no, there's a couple different, there's a group called FAIR, FAIRR, if that's who you're referring to.
That is who I'm referring to.
Yeah, I'm familiar with their work. I love what they do. A little different than, again, they're that gray area, right? Because they're discussing a lot. They have what they call it the protein index. So they're actually looking at companies that may still be providing meat and non-vegan items, but they're ranking those to say, okay, although they are providing meat, they're better at it than Joe Schmo down the street, which I think is valuable. But for me, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You got it. I'm like, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and that's a great start. But what they are trying to push that I think is vital to your point is, why isn't animal agriculture? Why isn't this on ESG? So let me take a step back. You talked about the environmental ETFs. So here is a concern of mine. Well, we know that animal agriculture is one of the largest issues with the environment. waterways. I'm in Iowa. I haven't been able to swim in a lake here since I've been here. So I won't go off on a tangent, but I'm really upset about that because animal agriculture has destroyed the waterways here. You literally cannot get into a body of water in this state and swim. I wouldn't put my daughter in it because of animal agriculture. So why are we not looking at that when we're talking about environmental funds? Well, because it's not popular. There's just the bottom line. They are in the market to sell products, be in their investment. And that's why the vegan investment, it's a tricky monster because that term just isn't popular. There's only 4 or 5% of the population. If you're trying to sell a product, are you going to market to 4% of the population? So same as those energy ETFs. A lot of them, and I have conversations with a lot of them, and they know where I stand on it. It's like, until you start taking animal agriculture into this, it's a farce. It's a farce. It's not an environmental index. You're just avoiding fossil fuels. Not the same.
So I think what you're saying here is it's not enough to do no harm. Actually, you have to do good. Am I getting the gist of your comment?
I think that's fair. I mean, from like the funds or the ETFs, again, I try to give them leeway because they're running a business. So I'm like, you know what, you're in the business of profit, so you do that. But it's just nothing that again, if somebody did that, it's a better start than doing nothing, right? So you have your typical mutual fund. If you move to that direction, it's at least a move in the right direction. But we can just do so much more. And again, I think it's moving there.
By having a bespoke portfolio, basically.
I think so.
But I'm curious because are you seeing in your experience with all these funds that some funds are actually perhaps involved in animal agriculture and at the same time using an ESG label?
Oh, 100%.
That makes me so mad. Now, how can that be allowed? How can you be the most environmentally damaging and then get to use that label and then have that not to be regulated as misleading to the consumer?
It's why, and again, it's why I wrote the book, and it's why I do what I do. I'm actually trying to come up with another version of the book, which is called the vegan edition. So just to add a whole nother piece on this, because
I like it.
What we're missing is that. So if you're a vegan, there are only 2 funds out there. I mean, there's only 2 essentially funds. If you go to the cruelty-free-investing.org site, though, he's got a little blip on there about advisors, and I'm not trying to plug myself, but you'll see he lists 5 or 6 advisors he knows that run actually vegan portfolios, and I know all those folks. They're not competition. We're in the same game, trying to make an impact together. So there's just not a lot of people doing it because, again, it's just not popular. But it infuriates me. So I'll keep the smile and be happy, but it's frustrating. And here's a small example. I went to a social responsible conference last year. First time I went, I was like, I'll go check this scene out. The entire buffet, bacon, eggs,
God.
and I'm losing my mind. And even that they had a tofu scramble. This will blow you away. Tofu scramble, and it just said vegetarian. I'm like, why is this vegetarian? There's no cheese. They put egg in the tofu scramble.
Oh my God, what a dope.
Unfortunately, my wife would tell you my filter is not as good as it should be. And I just had to let them know, like, what is this? I'm yelling to the room. I'm like, this is an environmental conference and there's nothing but animal products up here to eat. What am I missing? What am I missing? So that gives you some insight into the environmental ETFs, environmental funds. I shouldn't say nobody, very few mutual funds are taking animal welfare into consideration in any way, shape, or form. So if you own a fund, you're likely supporting animal cruelty, period.
Yeah. And damaging the environment. I mean, I'm here for the animal cruelty piece, but the animal agriculture is the leading cause of environmental damage. So you're really adding to the problem. So, and we don't have time to waste. So it's really not enough to also just not do harm. You actually have to do good. What would be the first steps that you would recommend somebody who's just starting out?
Yeah, I'd say, if I can give one more quick example of what we're talking about, a simple investment is everybody's looking in their portfolio. So if you own a mutual fund and you're listening to this, right? Very possible you own a large cap mutual fund. That means it invested in 100 to 200, 300, several large companies. Guaranteed in that is going to be LabCorp, Smithfield, Tyson. Okay, simple example, if you own the S&P 500, so the basic index, the S&P 500, they've done the math, right? Carnegie Capital did the math. For every $10,000 invested in that index, you're basically contributing to the killing of 130 animals, all right?
Gosh, darn it.
So think about that as a vegan, the numbers are all, but let's say the vegan, they say as a vegan, you save about 100 animals a year by not eating it. Well,
Right.
if you've got 10,000 invested in the S&P 500, you've washed out whatever gain you've done, right? So now you're even. So I call it the vegan multiplier. That's my mission. If I can get you out of the S&P 500, for every 10,000 I get out, I saved 130 animals. It's like creating a vegan. So 100,000, I created 10 vegans, and on and on. So once people see what they actually own in their portfolios, their eyes, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was supporting. Yeah, because they don't care that you went to the store and you didn't buy eggs. They don't care. Tyson doesn't know that. They don't care because Monday you go in and you invest in your retirement program. Thank you. They know it. So anyway, that's a starting piece. Is what do you own, right? So your question is, where's a good starting place? Again, find somebody, and not to plug myself, I'm what they call a CSRIC. I was the very first one in the country. So I was the very first chartered social responsible investing consultant, the entire country, through the College of Financial Planning. That was a big deal to me. So find somebody that knows what they're doing. Find somebody that can screen what you already own, because it's important that folks understand when I'm talking to people about investing, I don't care if you invest another penny. I'm talking about using the votes that you already have. You already have votes. Use those to make an impact. It doesn't cost you a penny. It takes very little change. I can show you ways to make change with your portfolio without even having to make an adjustment to your portfolio, and we can touch on that too. So first off, you have to understand what you own, and that's going to be based on, here are my values, here's what I own, and what's not in alignment. Then you've got the tools to move forward. How do I make those changes?
That's fascinating. Let's talk about what you were saying there, how to use your voice with your money behind it without even making any changes to your portfolio.
Yeah, this is great. I work with a great group called Your Stake. Unfortunate name, STAKE, stake, not the steak that you'd eat. Yourstake.org. Love these guys. So essentially, again, what they've set up is so here's an issue. Take a step back. If you own a stock, you own that individual stock, $2,000 of it, and you're an owner. So you have a vote. If you own a mutual fund, you probably own 100 stocks in that mutual fund, but you have no voting rights, right? The mutual fund manager has those voting rights.
Right.
The mutual fund manager, 99% of the cases, is going to vote with the board. So whatever their board recommends, they're going along. Okay. So the concern with that is if you own mutual funds, there's not a lot you can do. You can't invest or have. So Your Stake created a system where now you can use those votes. So if you go onto their system, it doesn't cost a dime. You can log in, or I do it with all my clients. They're logged in, and you can see probably 30 to 40 different fights that they have right now. One is deforestation of the Amazon. One is McDonald's to stop. You name it. There's an issue, from anything from environmental to gender issues to privatized prisons. And all you need to do is they'll take a snapshot, link it essentially to your portfolio just to see that you have those assets. For example, if you had $50,000 in invested in Vanguard, and you say, you know what, I'm aboard this stop deforestation of the Amazon. You sign up, and those 50,000 shares that you have count towards the vote. They're trying to get 1 million votes. When they get 1 million votes, they then take that to Vanguard and put the squeeze on Vanguard to make those changes. And so far, these mutual fund companies have been coming aboard and following suit. So that's why you could have $1,000, $2,000, and still get in there, and you could vote on multiple issues and have your voice heard and be involved.
If I'm going to summarize what you're saying, it's that from the mutual funds, you are pooled into a larger pool, and therefore you can click probably a box somewhere and say what is important to you and where you want your portion of those votes directed. And then when they have enough, they can go to the actual fund and like Vanguard and direct them. Is that right?
You got it pretty close. So if you go to the Your Stake site, they'll show you, and they'll give wording on, hey, here's a cause. And they're deep. I mean, there's a lot of really heavy causes, and you just get to pick one. You're like, yep, I'm tuned to that one. You click the button, your votes are counting towards that vote, and you can see it move on the screen. So you can see the total, and you can see where it's going. And this is huge because who owns the money? BlackRock, Vanguard. Those are the two largest mutual fund companies.
Right.
BlackRock is, they're trying to move in that direction. I'm a little skeptical, but they sent a letter out last year actually to companies saying, look, if you don't get aboard social responsible investing, we're not going to pick you up. The power in that. I mean, they own the company. So a company, if they drop Dick's Sporting Goods, for example, Dick's Sporting Goods is going to feel that. So
Mhm.
that's how you make an impact. It's all in the wallet. You got to hit the companies in the wallet.
You've got to hit the companies in the wallet.
Yeah.
So we have to make that happen for animals. How do we get animals even on yourstake.org? Is it a priority that's listed there?
It is. I won't pat myself on the back, but I'm sure these guys are tired of me calling them, right? To me, it defeated the purpose. And they actually just sent me something yesterday that was actually pretty neat, where they've added to the portfolio where literally I could run through and tell you, by making this change, you can save 31 pigs a year or 140,000 chickens a year or whatever it may be. So now you can actually see real numeric change that you're making in your portfolio. And that's just empowering to people, because first they're like, I don't even know what I have. My advisors kind of put me in some things. What do I do? Okay, what are your values? Let's make that adjustment. Now see the impact you're making. That's powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's when we start getting momentum here.
And you're finding that they're listening? Like the folks at your stake, they're starting to make animals a priority, and then companies like Vanguard or BlackRock. Still too early to say if they're interested in animals, or where are we
I think
there?
they're moving. Yeah, I think what you're seeing, Vanguard and BlackRock, they're big. It's going to take them some time, but I'm starting to see some of the newer funds. So again, as I go out, that's what I'm talking to fund managers, and I harass them, right? Same thing. You got an environmental fund, just give them a strange face. What do you mean it's environmental? You got factory farming in there?
Right.
What are you even talking about? So I'm
Do
not
you
going to
even know what environmental funds are then? I mean, really, they discredit themselves because you look like a dope. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, they just don't get it. And again, I go to these forums all the time and they're like, oh boy, here he comes. And I just blast them. I'm like, look, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. It's the #1 cause of environmental issues. And we're not even having the conversation. And I get why, because it's not something that you want to do, right? Because now you'd have to make some changes in your life, right? Because you can't run a vegan fund and not be a vegan. That'd be strange.
Right. Yes. Right. Yes. Right.
So you've got that issue. But I think, again, what you're starting to see is folks like on the cruelty-free investing site and some other us are saying, look, if we've got to do this on our own, we'll do it on our own. Until some of these groups, so I've been talking with some other groups. I'd like to myself eventually come out with a vegan fund. But the concern with that is, again, you get back into the corporate world. What type of restrictions do you have? I like being able to be, what you see is what you get. Here you have it. Take it or leave it. But I think there'd be some interest in that. And just to give a little love to Karner Blue Capital, there are a group that has some decent products. I'm a fan of what they're trying to do. Nothing's perfect, but I really do believe that they're trying to do it right, and they are making an impact. So they are, if you're looking for just a broad-based animal welfare fund, definitely would take a peek at what they're doing.
So Karner Blue Capital was on this show 2 weeks ago, and we had a nice conversation about adding the A and B, so animals and biodiversity, to the definition of ESG, which right now does not encompass animals or biodiversity, just talks about environmental damage and social governance, so diversity on the boards, et cetera. So they're trying, Vicky specifically trying to bring that conversation to the UN, and getting some of these conversations to happen is no easy feat. So I also say, I applaud them and shout out to Karner Blue, and shout out to you for all that you're doing, Kerby, which is how we roll now together. I just want to make sure that people can find you. So please give them your information.
Yeah, you can find me online, Stephan Kerby, Kerby is how you spell the last name. The firm that I work with, partners in the firm. Again, my job is I run the social responsible investing division. But really, best way to find me is hop online. I'm on Amazon. It's a published book. Get a copy of it. All the profits go to the local farm sanctuary. I don't want $1 from it. Get as many copies as you can, because again, everything is going to make an impact towards folks. So
wonderful. And then if people want to find you, did you give an email address? I don't think you did. You want us just to find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Stephan Kerby.
Yeah, Stephan Kerby, Stephan Kerby. You could find me. Again, if you find a copy of the book, it's easy. You'll find me on Facebook. I don't spend too much time trying to advertise it. If I could help folks, I want to help them. The book's a great start. Shows like this are a great start. So I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I think you would probably say that more people are going to get on board with socially responsible investing. Is that the trend that you see? And are you getting more and more clients that are asking for this? And what are you seeing coming from the marketplace?
Yes, and maybe it's just, again, I'm in the Midwest, so I'm in a unique spot for it, right? So I literally have pig trucks roll by my office every day. It's devastating. So I'm on ground zero of animal agriculture as far as I'm concerned.
You're in Iowa.
The slaughterhouse is 10 miles down the road. We can smell it. So I'm on ground zero of this. It's daunting sometimes, but what you're finding here, we are a little bit behind maybe the East and West Coast that have been, we've got a few vegan restaurants here. We're moving in that direction quickly.
What city are you in Iowa?
I'm right outside Des Moines. So I'm really close to Des Moines, Iowa, which is the capital. So we've got a few good spots down here, but it's a small community. It's growing. So that just gives me hope in the sense that even here, we're moving and it's growing. And what I'm finding is usually people under, and I hate to make it an age thing, but usually people under 50, if I talk to them, most of them have some sort of interest. And that's the unique part. Even if you could be Christian conservative, you could be a social responsible investor. There's no wrong answer. I mean, I've done talks in Minneapolis, country, like real small town Minneapolis, and we're talking about Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm like, half this room probably would want Dick's Sporting Goods not to sell any more firearms. Half the room probably wants them to sell more firearms, right? But if you're not voting, you're not involved. So if you're not voting, you're silent. You're nobody. So get involved regardless of what side you're on some of these things, and have a vote. Get involved.
I love that. Use your voice, use your dollars. You have unique power. Everybody wants your dollars. And when you combine your dollars with your voice, you will really see a change in the world if you apply those to your values. So you are not disempowered, regardless of what you might see on television with people to the right or to the left, just doing like you're not sure what they're doing. But you can actually move the needle. And always change comes from the bottom. So it's not going to come from government politicians who maybe are going to one day like wake up and smell the coffee. Never, ever going to happen. Use your voice and your dollars today. So I am wondering for you, you're probably going to say, oh, well, lots more socially responsible investing. But besides that, from your unique position where you sit in Iowa and you're a vegan and you're advocating for vegan investing and social responsible investing, what are your predictions for the future, let's say 3 to 5 years out, beyond the investing part?
Yeah, things that I'm excited about. You mentioned one of them earlier, and I think, and I'm sure I'll get some heat for this, is the 3D printing meat, the lab meat. And you're seeing a lot more of that starting to happen. It's going to take, I mean, years ago it was extremely expensive. I think to make a chicken breast was like $100,000, but they're getting it down to where that's scalable. I think that's going to have the largest impact on meat. And you talk to meat eaters and say, would you eat that? I wouldn't eat that. Have you been to a slaughterhouse, bud?
Right.
You wouldn't eat something made with somebody in a lab coat, right? That's as clean as possible. But you'd eat that?
Feces, in your food all the time, right? Yeah,
not logical. But again, I see it moving in that direction because we can create the same meat. It's completely cruelty-free. It's got all the stuff that you need or want in it. And if you're going down that route, to me, I think that's going to be a massive impact on what we're doing here. So I'm excited to see where that goes, even though, but still probably would never eat meat. I don't have any interest in it. But for folks that do, I see that being a huge change that I could be wrong, but I don't know how that's not going to get traction and be effective.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I've just recently tried Perfect Day ice cream. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Okay, so what they do is they take the cells from the inside of a cow's mouth, or there are actually so many biological reserves that you don't even have to do that. And then they, for lack of a better word, they map it onto a mushroom, a microbe, and then they ferment that microbe, and it just grows, and it builds the basis for what they need to make ice cream. And they add some sugar and all the good, and it's ice cream. It is ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. It's not vegan ice cream. It is ice cream without the cow. It is magical and it's so good. I had to pick myself off the floor. I was like, this is so gosh darn good. Get it out of my hands.
Oh, good. I'll have to find that for my wife. She's an ice cream lover. But again, those are the promising changes. Or even because I'm a maniac, I decided to take a Spanish course, right? So I do one-on-one. The young lady that I do the tutoring with, she's in Peru, and I was telling her what I eat, and she was showing me all the vegan restaurants down there, and all the vegan foods, and all the vegan ice creams, and I'm like, really surprised. She's like, no, it's moving that way here even. So right now, again, I think it's cost prohibitive to some people. I mean, it's not inexpensive, which is the problem. Again, I can get a large fry for 99 cents, but to get a thing of fruit costs me $2.99. So right now We're having cost issues associated with it. But again, more and more people are moving that direction, which is encouraging. I mean, now if I talk to somebody, again, I remember I got my haircut when I first moved out, and the lady, she was nervous about saying it. She's like, I kind of doing plant-based food. I was like, well, what movie did you watch? She's like, I watched What the Health. Whole conversation. So you're seeing more and more people going that route. So it's encouraging.
Yes, yes. And you'd think if anybody knew about the dangers of animal agriculture, it would be the folks that live in Ohio and Iowa who can't go swimming in any of the waterways. So they're living it and smelling it firsthand. So it doesn't surprise me in a way that they're like, actually, if we can find a better way, let's do it. Okay. If you're having a bad day and you're just hoping that animal agriculture would die faster, is there a phrase that you tell yourself to get yourself back in the game?
Oh boy. Is there a phrase I would say? I just tell folks you've been lied to for too long. I mean, this concept that you could save the planet or make money in the market, but you can't do both is just a falsehood. You can do them both. And so I would just encourage folks, if you're out there with the sign, good for you, excellent. But the guy driving by you, he doesn't have any power. Save your time, save your energy. Go out and do that, but there's better ways, there's more efficient ways to make change, and that's what encourages me, is going on and seeing folks that are making an impact. There's lots of ways you can do it, but to me, it is depressing where I'm at, but again, I'm encouraged by the fact that I've got a good community here. The community is growing. I can see more people grow in our group constantly. I can see new bodies coming in, asking the questions. People are open to it. Before, if you were a vegan, something was wrong with you. Now it's becoming significant. Again, even here, it's becoming significantly more acceptable and normal. So that's encouraging.
And I didn't even ask you, when did you go vegan and why?
That's a good question. About 4 years ago, I remember I've got a 21-year-old son, and now I have a 3-year-old daughter. So we had a long break, and she was a surprise. And I just remember, when my wife was pregnant, I was just walking up and down the street. I'm a big guy, but I'm in pretty decent shape. I try to keep in somewhat decent shape, but my body just hurt. And I'm 48 now. And I just thought, boy, something's wrong. Like, you work out, your body something felt wrong. And I'd done a personal training class that talked about the China study. And I read that 5 years ago. And I just thought, I dismissed it as like, I'm like, why aren't we doing this? And if it's so true, why aren't we doing this? Ignorant to what was happening. But long story short, my body didn't feel right that day. I went for a walk with the dog, and I was listening to a Netflix, What the Health. And I'm listening to this young guy, and I'm like, I don't like this. But as it kept going, I'm like, I think he's right. He's definitely right there. And it was a 2-hour walk. I went home and told my wife, I was like, I'm going to try to go vegan starting now. And I was like, you should watch the movie. You do whatever you want, but I think this is what I want to do. She's like, knock yourself out. I'm pretty intense, so I just got rid of everything. I was like, if we're going to do it, let's just do it now. And I just started doing it. And within a week, my body felt significantly better, dropped a lot of weight. And I'm like, there's something to this. And then my wife came aboard. She watched the movie too. And she's like, okay. And that was it. So first it was for physical reasons, just diet and just being physically better. But I find that once you remove that item off your plate, the fog clears, right? And you can now see the reality of what you were putting into your body and the unfortunate circumstance that it takes to get it there.
Yeah, and once you realize that, you say to yourself, "Oh, I will never go back." It's I'm incredulous at that it was part of my life, and I was not told even by doctors about how bad this was for me, and then all that other damage. I just I would of course never ever go back. Okay. So really busy, you're running around, you got lots of clients all day, you're working on portfolios, you're making a difference, helping people use their voice and their dollars to implement change. You're so busy you didn't have time for lunch. What is your go-to snack?
Hummus. Oh, that's a pretty easy one. Yeah, I eat a lot of hummus. Lately, it's been this last year I got my master gardener certification. So a friend of mine runs a plant-based restaurant locally, and we thought during COVID, I was like, well, why don't we try to grow the food for the restaurant? Let's try to figure out how to grow vegetables. So again, per usual, I dive into a project. So I got my certification in it. And so long story short, we ended up with probably 50 quarts of salsa. So we're like, let's make a bunch of salsa. So salsa's coming out of my ears. So I eat a lot of salsa. I eat a lot of hummus. Those are my two go-to snacks.
Well, it's not a bad way to roll. I want to tell everybody to get You Are the Change, the Beginner's Guide to Socially Responsible Investing. Find it on Amazon, anywhere you might want to get your books. And Stephan Kerby, you are here to help people. You're a financial advisor. You can help people sift through what they already have in their own portfolios. You can help them put together portfolios from the vegan and ESG perspective, environmental and social governance perspective. What I think is really interesting is that you've given us some great tips by going to crueltyfreeinvesting.org. That's also running down at the bottom of your screen, and also yourstake.org. And you can figure out what you already have in your portfolio that is doing good or bad, and how you maybe want to use your already existing voice in mutual funds to actually make a difference. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Stephan can explain that even better than I. So you can always reach out to him. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for being such an advocate. Thank you for walking into a room of environmentalists who are serving bacon and tell them, like, what the F is going on here?
Well, can I leave you with one quick thing? It's something I want to offer folks. And again, I thought of this as we were going through the conversation. I don't think I'll regret it later. If there's a way to put my contact information somewhere on here, I'll get it to you with my phone number or my email address. If people are interested, what I'm willing to do for folks is run this impact report for them. So if you call me, probably take us 15 minutes on the phone. You just need to let me know what stocks or mutual funds or positions that you own. I will run them through my impact report, and I will tell you your impact. So I will tell you, you're invested in privatized prisons, you're invested in poor energy companies, or you're not. What's it look like? What you want to do with that information at that stage is up to you. If you want to take it to your current advisor and have them work with you, I have zero issue with that. But what I want to do is educate people on what they're already voting on. Because the guess is, regardless of where you're political right now, I guarantee that you're supporting the side that you don't want to support in so many areas. So first, just understanding what you own and who you're supporting with your votes, I think is a huge step. And I'm more than willing to do that for folks. And again, you can take that information. It's free. Take it wherever you want. Do it on your own. Do it with somebody else. But I think you need to know what you're supporting with your votes right now. And I'd like to help with that.
So at least get a baseline, everybody. So know where you are, and from there you can make a difference. How do you want to do it? Should we just shout out your telephone number here?
Sure.
How do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'll give you my phone number. It's 515-729-4486. Again, it's 515-729-4486. If I miss you, I'll get back to you. But again, probably take us 15 minutes. If you just have a copy of your statement that tells me your investments, we could have a quick discussion. Nothing too personal, and I'll be able to give you an idea of what that looks like and send you that report. And again, we could take it from there. But hopefully that'll help some folks.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I want to know what, I mean, I've been trying to, steer my stuff into what I believe is a better direction. Yeah. But this is my task over that. You are my last Plant-Based Business Hour interview of 2020. And this is my task at hand over the Christmas holidays is to figure out what the heck I'm doing and how to steer the ship in the direction I want. So everybody, you've got his number there, 515-729-4486. You might get a lot of people calling you. Gosh, that's great. I want to thank you for all that you do. You are the change, a beginner's guide to socially responsible investing. It's on Amazon, folks, and everything. All the proceeds go to animal sanctuaries. So FYI, you can reach out to Stephan. You've got his phone number, and he's here to help you. And to everybody, this is my last Plant-Based Business Hour of 2020. So thank you all for all that you do. And of course, Stephan, thank you for all that you do.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you don't go away. Everybody else, happy holidays. I do have an interview for Awesome Vegans on Thursday, but otherwise I will see everybody in 2021. Stay put, Stephen, and here we go. Bye, folks.